Continue our study in the book of Revelation. Kindly turn with me to Revelation chapter 14. We have already completed up to 13 chapters. Today we are going to start with chapter 14. Now, let me read verse 1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written on their foreheads. Now, this is how chapter 14, verse 1 starts. If we go a few verses before that, we come to chapter 13. What do we see there? Let me read chapter 13 also, verse 16 onwards. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on the right hand or on their foreheads. That is the mark of the beast. So chapter 13 talks about the mark of the beast. Chapter 14 talks about the Father's name written in their foreheads. 144,000. That's how chapter 14 starts. We are going to look at chapter 14. We are going to see the people in Zion. We will see 3 angels bringing gospel. We will also study the 2 harvests that takes place. Shall we look to the Lord in prayer? Loving Heavenly Father, we say thank you to you for the time you have granted to us to gather together to study your word of Revelation chapter 14. Help us, Lord, to understand, prepare ourselves for the events that are yet to take place. You are a God who doesn't do anything before revealing it to your servants, so that we may be ready for what comes in front of us in the future time. Help us and guide us in the study of your word. We offer this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, the book of Revelation, as John has written from Patmos, we have already gone through it and we have seen many things on that. And with the introduction in chapter 1 and chapter 2 and 3 talked about the condition of the churches that was prevalent at that time. And also, you can put it even for today, the condition of the churches. So that's how it comes. Then chapter 4 and 5 talk about the worshiping God in his presence. Have we seen that? So that should give us some sort of idea. Where did the people come to worship God? Probably the rapture has taken place before that. We do not, it doesn't mention that. John does not talk about it in Revelation, before chapter 4 and 5. Now, when you come to chapter 6, I mentioned to you many times before also, chapter 6 starts about the tribulation time with 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls. There's a scroll with 7 seals. With that comes all these things. The first seal is opened in chapter 6, verse 1. So time frame for chapter 6 is the beginning of tribulation period. It's called the Great Tribulation. Now, from Daniel, because he mentioned this as a 1-week period, we say that it is a 7-year period tribulation. That's how we normally put that as a 7-year period tribulation. Now, when the tribulation starts, this chapter 6, now we come to the breaking of the seals. So you'll find that in chapter 6, we have already gone through that. And when you come to chapter 7, that is important because we are going to connect to chapter 7 along with chapter 14. In chapter 7, when the 6th seal is open, what happened? It says, chapter 7, verse 1. After these things, I saw 4 angels standing on 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. I saw another angel ascending from east, having the seal of the living God. Angel with the seal of the living God. He cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, don't hurt the earth or the sea or the trees till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. Now, keep one thing in mind. Satan always duplicates. Satan always deceives. If God seals on the forehead, he comes with the mark of the beast on the forehead also. It's a sort of a deception they do. Now, how do they seal? In chapter 7, if you see verse 5 onwards to verse 8, it talks about 144,000 among the Israelites sealed. That means during tribulation period, these 144,000 Israelites will present the gospel to the people of the world. They are the evangelists. They go and do that. So in 7, we see them. Again, we are going to see them in chapter 14 also. Okay. Now, chapter 6 starts with the tribulation. Then we come to the tribulation period. When you come to chapters 8 and 9, time frame, you want to know the time frame. Roughly, we have crossed 3.5 years. We have come halfway through the tribulation time. Okay. Then we find seventh seal opening in chapter 8. So roughly we can take it. It's a very rough account, I'm telling. 7 seals for the first half of tribulation period, 42 months or 3.5 years. And the 7 trumpet and 7 bowls, the rest of the 3.5. You can keep it in mind, easy to remember, you see. Now, we see 8, 9, and we have seen chapter 10 also, as the trumpets are getting blown, and we find a few things happen there. A small scroll, John eating the scroll, 2 witnesses coming, they killed, they come back to life. Then the 7th trumpet sounds, chapter 11 we have seen. Chapter 12 goes back to the other area when a child is born and the Satan wants to destroy him. I refer that as, in all probability, the birth of Jesus and Herod trying to kill. Now that's the kind of a thing came out. When you come to chapter 13, we find Antichrist and the false prophet. Now, with chapter 13, we see the completion of the satanic trinity. Dragon is Satan. Dragon is also mentioned here, as we have come already. Then the beast from the sea is the Antichrist. Beast from the earth in chapter 13 is false prophet. So the trinity of satanic forces are unleashed during tribulation period. The trinity of satanic forces are unleashed during the tribulation period. Now, something we need to keep in mind, keeping the whole general concept. If God has removed the church, that's what we have been talking about. So what is left in the tribulation period is people who did not receive Christ. They were left out. Even to those people, God is sending 144,000 evangelists to preach the gospel again. That's what you're going to see here again and again, till the last judgment, gospel is getting preached. Today we are going to see when man has completed preaching of the gospel, God gives the responsibility to angels to preach the gospel. The idea is God is a God of love. He doesn't want anybody to perish. Till the last moment, he's trying his best, if I have to use the word, to bring people unto him. Now, at the same time, during the tribulation period, God allows the evil to come. You understand? Men have been going after anti-God, that is satanic forces against God himself. They are worshipping satanic forces. All the idol worship was satanic. So now God says, you have done it, I'm going to release them so that they will take over you. So dragon comes, the Antichrist comes, false prophets come, they put the mark of the beast, they deceive, they do a lot of signs and wonders and all these things. The entire deception comes in there. That's what we have seen up to chapter 13. Okay. Now, in chapter 13 at the end, There are 3 verses. It talks about the mark of the beast. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark in the right hand or on the forehead, that no man might buy, sell, except he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. The idea is you show your allegiance to the beast so that you can survive on the earth. That's what it says. Here is the wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast. It is 666, it says that. Against that, now you come to chapter 14, verse 1. 144,000 stood on Mount Zion, with him 144,000, having the Father's name written on the foreheads. Now, standing on Mount Zion, that is in Jerusalem, is talking about the 144,000 Jews. Coming back to Zion is the citadel of God. Zion is a place of ruling for God. They come to the place of God right in Jerusalem. They are living there. It is on the physical world. So what God is telling us, in spite of the mark of the beast, these 144,000 are having the mark of the Father. You can still survive. That's the point he's bringing, you know. So he's talking about, they're also singing and all. We'll come to that as we go down into that. Now, we have seen that beast is giving a mark, beast is having a trinity. All these things we have seen. Now, this 144,000 is the one which you've seen in chapter 7. The angels have marked it. They stand firm. They are victorious even in the time of tribulation. That's the point the Revelation is making. John is making the point. Even during the time of tribulation, even when the trinity of satanic forces, dragon, antichrist, and false prophet come, these 144,000 are victorious on this earth. That is conquering. That's what he's talking about. Okay, let's get on to Revelation chapter 144, verse 2. I'm sorry, Revelation chapter 14, verse 2. I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, as the voice of a great thunder. I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. There are 2 voices here. One is the voice from heaven, the voice of many waters, and a voice of great thunder. That is one voice coming from heaven. Heard the voice of the harpers harping with their harps. Harpers are the 144,000. They are singing a song. The voice from heaven, it doesn't identify where it comes from, except it is coming from heaven. Doesn't identify from who it comes. It says voice of many waters, voice of a great thunder. So when you look at that voice of heaven, many waters, many thunders, it is voice of God approving these people. That's all we can conclude. No further detail is given by John about that voice. Now let's move on to verse 3. This 144,000, they are singing a song, standing in Jerusalem. What song they sing? As it were a new song before the throne and before the 4 beasts and the elders, and no man could learn the song but 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. Now they were redeemed from the earth. Now, verse 3, you're going to find it a little difficult because it says they are redeemed from the earth. Now they are standing before God. Have they physically moved over there and standing before God? Or they are worshiping on the earth and they come in the presence of God? That clarity is not very well known there when John is writing. So whichever way we can take it, either they moved out means they have been no more living on the earth. They have been martyred, probably. That's what we would take. But it doesn't mention anything about that. It mentions about their victory. So they may be there on earth, but moving into a spiritual realm when you worship. You see, whenever we worship, we also see in chapter 5, when the people worship, all the entire universe joins in worship. That could be the concept given in verse 3, Revelation chapter 14 and verse 3. So when they sing a new song, before the throne. The four beasts, elders, and all the songs. No man could learn the song. Only the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth, they know the song. These are they were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. They are they who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and unto the Lamb. So it says redeemed from men, and it mentions the word first fruits. So it has a connotation both ways. Either they are on the earth or they are no more on the earth, they're gone. First fruit may indicate that Jesus was the first fruit, you see. Now, these people come in the last days. Because they come in the last days, they are single. They are not married. That's what verse 4 says. They spend the whole time bringing the gospel. There's no time now left for marriage or raising a family, nothing of the sort. It's a 7-year period, very short time. We are already come to the other half of the 7-year period. So I'm 3.5 years. So very short time. So you have to present the gospel and do all these things. So that's why he says they are not worried about family. They are totally giving themselves to the spread of the gospel. Verse 5, in their mouth was found no guile. They are without fault before the throne of God. This is 144,000 we find whom we found in chapter 7 are reappearing in chapter 14 again. Now, it is difficult to pinpointedly say because John has not very categorically mentioned whether they are on earth or moved out to heaven. Whichever way it is, they have been victorious. They are singing a song of praise to God in presence of his throne. That is the first part of chapter 14 we are seeing. Now, one thing you can think about. This 144,000, in verse 1 it says they're standing on Mount Zion. And 3, it talks about they are in front of the throne. So we do not know where they are. But one thing we know when you move to verse 6. Verse 6 onwards, the gospel is preached to the people by angels. Think about that. That shows God's desire, God's love. So a time is coming, all the people, human beings, who could serve God, they're finishing the service. The last one is the 144,000. Probably they are not on the earth. Probably. It looks like that. Because now angels are coming and taking up the position. We find the angels have come and they give the gospel. Think about it. Now, I want you to imagine at that time, you're living on the earth. We have not seen angels. Only few people have seen angels. Mary has seen angels. And we have seen angels appearing to people directly, face to face, and also sometimes coming in visions. All of the Bible, we see angels coming. Now, if an angel goes over the air throughout the world, proclaiming the gospel, how will you respond if you are on the earth? It is something wonderful, isn't it? Think about it. That is exactly what it is written in verses 6 to 11. We need to understand, put yourself there. You're living on the earth, not believing the gospel. Suddenly you see the same gospel is being preached. Think of the people who persecute the people. Think of the man who was throwing a stone at a person who was giving the gospel. Now he sees the same gospel being told in the air by the angels going. The guy sees the angel. He hears them talking the gospel. Think of it. God has gone to that extent of giving the gospel in a miraculous way. That is what we are going to read now. I want you to position yourself and think, what is the implication on that? Even with that, if people reject, what do you think God can do? Let's read verse 6. I saw another angel fly in the mid-heaven. In the mid-heaven. That is in the end where the airplane flies, eagle flies. You can actually think of an eagle flying or a crow flying, what height we do not know, mid-heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, to every nation, every tribe, every tongue, every people. Got it? One angel. Now, imagine the news reporters. Will they report the news or not? I do not know. No idea. Some of them may or may not also. They may not like the message. But the point is this: without the news on the television, people, when they step out, they can see the angel going out. God is making sure everyone on the earth will hear this message. He's making sure of that. So the message is coming in the heavens. Suppose you hear a sound coming from the heavens. Naturally, people would like to step out and look up. When you look up, what do you see? An angel flying. Look at it. I saw another angel fly in mid-heaven. Angel flying in the mid-heaven, people seeing itself is a miracle. And that angel giving a message. Now, what should be the response? Think of the man who threw a stone at a preacher who was preaching the gospel. The guy hears the same message from the angel. What do you think he'll think? That is a kind of impact God is bringing to them. The reason is, in spite of that, if you refuse the gospel, the punishment of lake of fire is there. That's what God is bringing to them. So in verse 6, you see, that dwell on the earth, to every nation, every tribe, every tongue, and every people. Now, I want you to look at verse 6 a little more and open your understanding of that. You are there. If the angel is flying over England, she will give the gospel in what language? In English. When he flies over France, he will give the gospel in what language? French. When he flies over Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, he'll speak in Telugu. When he flies over Mexico, he'll speak in Spanish. You got it? Now look at it. Every nation, every tribe, every tongue. God covers all the people, all the nations, all the languages. There are about 2,000 plus languages people are speaking today in the world. That many languages, one angel will cover because he's an angelic being. They can do that. They can do that. God has gone to that extent of doing this. Now, one more thing, let me put it this way. Many people, some of the preachers, not now, some 100 years back and all, they said, when they looked at the verse, they said, oh, this is television preaching, this is radio preaching, and they refer to them, So in one of the TV evangelists called, his name is Angel One. He has got a TV. He says, I'm the angel, first angel giving the message, because it goes like this, flying to the world. It's one way correct. It goes to the world in different languages. They're doing wonderful job. Wonderful job. But the revelation, I have a feeling, because 144,000 this is the last group from Israel has preached the gospel in tribulation time. In tribulation time, God will definitely use a miraculous means. Angel preaching the gospel to all the people in their own language. You need to think about it. That's how God brings the gospel to the people. Let's go to verse 7. Saying with a loud voice, fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, worship him that made heaven and earth and sea and fountain of waters. Now, the angel said, you worship a God who is a creator of heaven and earth. Have you noticed that in verse 7? He's calling the people of the earth to worship the creator. Now, what is he implying? God created you. So the angel says, you are a human being created by God. Look at your creator and worship him. Now, what did man do? He takes a stone, he takes a wood, he takes a clay, makes a figure and says, this is my God. Exactly opposite to that is the angel is talking, putting sense to the people. You make a form and you say, that is God. That is not God. You made that God. That God didn't make you. You made it. Don't be foolish. That's what the angel is telling. So you worship the God of heaven. You see, the concept of idolatry is totally Satanic. Concept of idolatry is totally Satanic. I don't know whether you talk to people who are idol worshippers and are very devout and very good people. I have talked to them. You know what they say is, I don't see God, so I need a figure to see in front of me to think he is God. That is a concept they use it. So they make idols and worship it. God is against that. So that is verse 7, it talks about it. If you come to verse 8, there followed another angel. Now it's the second angel. Another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink the wine of the wrath of their fornication. So second angel talks about Babylon. Babylon is fallen, What is Babylon? Babylon is anti-God. So when God is the creator, we are supposed to follow God and worship him. Now, Babylon is set up as against God. Remember, Babel, they want to make something of the man, wanted to make something of his own hands, so that he will go by that. I will create my own God, whether it's idol worship or satanic worship, whatever it is, that is Babylon. Babylon is against God. It is a deceptive God. Everything which is connected with that kind of a deception is Babylon. Now let me go a little further. Paul talks about it as idolatry. You know what he says? It need not be an idol which you go and worship, neither a God which you go and worship. You may not even go to church or a temple. You may not even think about a God. You may be atheist. But what is it you're worshiping? What is worship? You set your heart on that and spend the time for that throughout your life. Some people go for the job, earn money. Some people want to make more money. Some people want to enjoy their life. Some people want to do this and that. That is also an idolatry. That is also you're worshiping another God. Whatever it is. God of your pleasure, God of your property, God of your money, whatever it is. Everything takes the place of God. Because God said, love your God with all your heart, all your soul, with all your mind. Now, when you remove that and put something else, all your heart and soul and mind goes to something else, that becomes the God for you. That is Babylon. That is Babylon. Now, at the time of chapter 14, one angel comes and shouts, Babylon is fallen and fallen. What does it mean? When you live on the earth, you have certain things which has got value. Gold has got a value. Silver has a value. You can buy a property. You can use money. You can use a dollar bill. A time will come when they will not have any value. When you go through tribulation, when you go through the wrath of God poured upon it, you're going to suddenly realize these things make no sense. That's the time he says Babylon is fallen. Gone. It doesn't have any effect. What you have been thinking all the time. The foolish man built his house on the sand. When the rain comes and flood comes, it gets washed away. That's what happens. That is that Babylon is gone, washed away. The wise man built his house on the rock. That's the message. So the second angel says, Babylon is fallen and Babylon is fallen. That great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So Babylon was drawing away from God the people. That's what we are seeing. Let's go further, verse 9. Another angel comes. The third angel followed them. First gives the gospel, warning. Second gives Babylon is fallen. Third, verse 9, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive the mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out and diluted into the cup of his indignation, that he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lord. Now, the third angel is giving a warning not to take mark of the beast. Now, let us come to the sequence. Sometimes we have been looking at Revelation sequentially, one thing after another. Now, you need to understand, when John is writing, he wrote about the mark of the beast, which we find in chapter 13, verses 16 and 15, and 16 to 18. Warning for the mark of the beast comes in chapter 14, verses 9, 10, and 11, 3 verses. Now, if a warning is given by God, in a time frame, that warning, these 3 verses, third angel, must be doing it before the mark of the beast is coming. You are in with me? God is giving a warning not to take the mark of the beast. And at that time only beast is coming, but God is giving warning. God is not doing this, that everybody is taking the mark of the beast and then he gives the warning. No, warning must come before. So now we understand, in the Revelation, it's not always sequential. Sometimes you have to take as a section of it, put it before. If you have to take the section, chapter 14, verse 9 to 11, it has to come before the mark of the beast. God gives the warning, then the mark of the beast comes. That's how you have to put it in. So sequential is very, very difficult to fit in. Sometimes we wonder where to put and what. All these things come. We'll see one more thing as we go on. The time sequence I'm telling. Anyhow, there is a warning given by God about the mark of the beast. Don't take the mark of the beast. Being God, he would have given the warning before the mark of the beast came. You can be sure of that, right? So that is how it goes. So 3 angels. First angel, gospel. Second angel talks about Babylon. Third angel talks about the mark of the beast. Let me read what the third angel said. Verse 9. Third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship this beast and his image, receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out undiluted into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of the torment ascends forever and ever. They have no rest, day or night, who worship the beast, his image, and whosoever receives the mark of the beast. This section definitely is a warning given before all these things come to pass. God would have. So you need to put it in the right place, sequence, the right sequence there. Let's move on to verses 12 and 13. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus Christ. It talks about the believers. It talks about the believers here. What happens there? Verse 13. I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and the works do follow them. Marvelous verse, verse 13. It talks about believers in Christ who die. They die in the Lord because they believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. And the Spirit says, although they die, they rest from the labor. They are doing certain labor on the earth, certain things for the Lord on the earth. They rest from that because they are no more physically on the earth. But their works will follow. That means whatever they left on the earth will continue going on and on and on. That is the beauty of it. Your labor for the Lord does not end the day you die from the earth. It will continue. Your labor, whatever labor you have done. That's very important. Whether you have shared a thought, given a message, or done some help, all these things will continue. Even if you left the earth, that is what this is. Labor in the Lord, very important. You must be in the Lord and you must labor in the Lord. If that is not there, it doesn't work. A lot of people do good works, but they are not in the Lord. You can do a good work outside the Lord also. But when you do it in the Lord, when you labor in the Lord, they will continue. That's what it says in verse 13. Okay. Now, having said that, let's keep moving further and see. This chapter 12 and 13 is John has just put in here about what he heard from the Spirit. And he writes it there about the believers. Then we come to the next section, 14 to 20. It talks about two harvests. And what they are and all, this is going to be a little difficult to understand, but we'll get an idea what it is. We may not be able to put it in a sequence also here. There are two harvests. 14 to 16 talk about one harvest. Verses 17 to 20 talk about another harvest. You can give your ideas, your opinion also at the end of the talk, because these studies are not one-man study. Everybody gives their ideas also on this. There are two. We are going to look at the two harvests. Okay. Now, I'm going to give some thoughts on this harvest. Probably, the first harvest, which is mentioned in 14 to 16, it is something which Christ gathers his people out of the earth. It is a possibility there. I'll explain why I think so. Some people also mention the same thing. The second one, 17 to 20, is the left out people on the earth on whom the judgment of God comes. That's how we can look at it. Let's go into the details. I'm going to read verse 14. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud. Upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having in his hand, on his head, a golden crown, and in his hand, a sharp sickle. Now, as you read this description in verse 14, the person you can immediately know is the Son of Man, Jesus Christ. Verse 15, another angel came out of the temple. Now, what is this temple we are talking about? Angel coming out of the temple is definitely relating to the presence of God. The temple of God. The angel is coming out of God. It looks like that God the Father gives a clearance. That's what is happening. Look at it. And the angel came out of the temple crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud. The person sitting on the cloud is Jesus Christ, the Son of God. The angel comes from the temple, probably from God the Father, with the message at clearance. What is that? Thrust your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. Harvest of the earth is ripe. Do you remember when Jesus was on the earth? He talked about the Son of Man coming, he talked about gathering of these people, what exactly we are seeing here. And he mentioned something at that time about what will happen and when it will happen. All these things he said in all clarity. If you turn to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, look at verse 29. Immediately after tribulation, he's talking about the great tribulation. That's what we are looking at in Revelation. We are in the tribulation, second part. Immediately after the tribulation, he says, those days shall sun be darkened, moon shall not give light, the stars shall fall from heaven, powers of heaven shall be shaken, and there shall appear the sign of Son of Man in the heaven. There shall appear the sign of Son of Man in the heaven. Did you read the harvest? We read something. Verse 14, in chapter 14, the sign of Son of Man will appear on the heaven. That's what he says. Verse 31, he shall send his angel with the great sound of trumpet, and they shall gather together the elect from the four winds. They will gather God's people. Come to verse 36. But of the day and the hour knows no man, nor the angels of heaven, but my Father. So Jesus said, Son of Man will come. Angels will collect God's people. Now come to Revelation 14. Here you see in verse 14, Son of Man in the cloud, and no one knows the time except God the Father. Verse 15, angel comes on from the temple telling Christ. Angel is not the boss of Christ. Christ is the boss of the angel, but he's a messenger from the Father. Go ahead, reap the earth. No man knows the time except the Father. Father gives clearance. And they go and reap. Verse 16, Revelation chapter 14, verse 16. And he that sat on the cloud thrust his sickle in the earth, and the earth was reaped. What was happening? Come back to Matthew chapter 24, verse 31. He shall send his angels with the great sound of trumpet. They shall gather together the elect from the four winds, from ends of the heaven to the other. They'll gather the elect of God's people. That's it. Now, that's what 14 to 16 we are seeing very clearly, all clarity. We'll come to 17 to 20 a little later, but we are going to see some problems here. What does this mean? That Jesus comes and gathers people. You remember what Paul said in Thessalonians? We all studied it quite a lot. We know it. We refer to it again and again. We talk about it as a great hope that we all have. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 16 and 17. Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel. Dead in Christ will rise. Then who are alive will be caught up. It fits in very well. He'll put his sickle and gather the people from the earth. But now, what about the sequence? What about the timing? When will this happen? We are right into tribulation period. Now, let me tell you something. Among the biblical scholars and preachers, there are three views. I've been telling to you the view that rapture will take place before tribulation. That is called pre-tribulation rapture. There are people, they're also fine believers, they have studied the word, they say rapture will take place during tribulation. There are people who say rapture will take place end of tribulation. What is the basis they say? Now, one of the bases is this. If you come to Revelation 14:14, we are coming to the end of tribulation. So some people say, wait a minute. In Revelation 14:14, John says it will take place at this time. So it is the end of tribulation. So when you read the Bible, it doesn't say when the rapture will take place because no one knows the time. It's a total secret. You can't even imagine. That is why God has put it in such a way You do not know whether it will take place before tribulation, mid-tribulation, after tribulation. All that God says is be ready today. For rapture, you must be ready right now. That's what it says. When you come to second coming, it's totally different. End of tribulation, when Antichrist is there, when he walks into the temple to sit and say that I'm God, Jesus comes back. The timing is perfect. You know exactly. Probably it will be televised. You'll all see there's a temple in Jerusalem and all these things, blah, blah, whatever is happening. He's a great leader. And he claims to be God. When he claims to be God, it will come on the television also. You know exactly that's the time Jesus' foot will touch the Mount of Olivet. Second coming is well known. And when he comes, we can see on the air. All eyes will see him, he said. So this one, rapture, only God knows. The reason is he wants every believer to be ready now. So we are told to be ready as the rapture is going to take place next moment. That is why he said, we don't know what time. That is why you find rapture is put in different places in the Bible. So when people study, some people say it is going to be before tribulation. Some say it will be during tribulation. Some say the end of tribulation. What's happening? No man knows the hour or time when that will happen. So don't break your head. Don't be arguing about it, when it will take. I believe God has clearly put it in different ways so that you and I cannot even put it where it should happen. When he has said very clearly, this section will happen when God decides when it has to happen. So chronologically, we cannot put it when it's going to happen. Keep that in mind. So 14 to 16 is that. So it comes very clearly. Even in Revelation 14, when it comes here, we are very clear when it will happen. No one knows the time. Come to the second part, 17 to 20. What happens to the people left out? Let me read the verses. And another angel came out of the temple, which is in heaven. Now the temple is in heaven, have you noticed? So the angel which came, the first temple is also heaven. That is, it's coming from God the Father. He also having a sharp sickle. Now angel is having a sharp sickle, harvesting. Another angel came out from the altar, this also from the temple in the heaven, who had power over fire, cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust your sharp sickle, gather the clusters of wine of the earth, for our grapes are fully ripe. And another angel, and the angel thrust his sickle into the earth, gathered the wine of the earth, cast it to the great winepress of the wrath of God, and the winepress was trodden outside the city. Blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse's bridle, for 1,600 furlongs. Now, this is the judgment of God on unbelievers. It's very symbolic, that's all. It symbolically says, telling the angel, gather the rest of the people, they will face the judgment of God. The judgment of God is now here shown as they are pressed in a wine press. But actually, when you come to the end of the book, the judgment of God is lake of fire, tormented day and night. That's the judgment. But it symbolically is telling this is the judgment. So 14 to 16 talks about taking out the people of God out of the earth. 17 to 20 talking about the judgment coming on the people of the earth who live on the earth, who have refused the great salvation which God offered them. So chapter 14 closes with that, with the harvest, two harvests, one people of God, one. The second is for the judgment of God. Okay. Now, I mentioned to you about all these timings and everything. So we have completed chapter 14 now. Let us just sum it up. After that, time will be given. You can comment your own comments. You can also share your thoughts, your questions, your queries, anything you want. So we are now coming back to the 144,000 who preached the gospel. They are now praising God in the presence of the Lord. And they are singing a song. They are a short time they had, because they come in the tribulation time, the second half. They're preaching the gospel, very short time. They are celibate. They didn't marry, but They spent the short time fully giving the gospel to the people. Wonderfully has done. They came conquering out of the tribulation as well as from the Antichrist. See, Antichrist, false prophet, they're all there. In their presence only this has happened. So they are victorious in that sense. They are not polluted with Antichrist. So that's the first part we have seen in chapter 14. And the second part, even after he has removed the 144,000, the angels are preaching the gospel. That is God's love. First angel preaches the gospel. Second angel proclaims the fall of Babylon. Babylon indicates drawing people away from God. All those things are clubbed together, given one name, Babylon. Third, it talks about a warning of worshipping the beast, taking the mark of the beast. Actually, I said sequentially it should go earlier. There's a warning given before the beast and mark of the beast come into existence. That's how you put it. Then it talks about the believer's death, glorious. Then he talks about two harvests. One is people of God, another is people who rejected God. What is their end? That is what he talked about. We have seen 14 to 16, the people of God is taken up, harvested. Maybe it's something like a rapture. 17 to 20 is the judgment of God falling on them. The actual judgment, what you want to see, you will see it in chapter 20. When they at the great white throne judgment, and it says, finally, in verse 15, chapter 20 and verse 15, whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. That's the end. That's the eternal punishment. That's how he talks about it. So we have seen today chapter 14. I'm going to stop at this point now.